Tropical Storm Yamaneko turns post-tropical in the Western Pacific on tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for November 14th. Well, we're struggling for a real headline tonight because both of the storms that we had active are now gone. They've turned extratropical. Not gone fully, but they're not tropical anymore. Nicole and Yamaneko in either parts of the world there. There are a few other little rumblings of potential developments in the coming week, but the tropics are actually rather quiet right now. Nicole sweeping across the Atlantic Ocean right now. It's well to the north of the Azores on day 167 of hurricane season. Nothing else active in the Atlantic and nothing expected. In the Eastern Pacific, even quieter, nothing here at all, and we're not expecting anything here either, so we'll be twiddling thumbs for the next 10 seconds or so before we take a look at the next slide. Day 184 of hurricane season. Looks like the Eastern Pacific is just about done. Western Pacific, Yamaneko is done. It's become a remnant low now. Still got convection on the eastern side, but it's been shoveled way too far to the east, and we've decided to make the call for a remnant low now, and there's not much left of it, to be honest. We'll look at satellite shortly. And in the South Indian Ocean, we still have a 20% area of interest that could be heading towards the Cocos Islands eventually, could become a tropical cyclone, and not on the screen is also a 10% chance in the Bay of Bengal for the next 5 days. We'll look at those in depth on the models. Latest satellite then, this is what the North Atlantic is looking like. You'll see in the far distance, top right hand side, what's left of Nicole, and sweeping along all of that convection, drawing a line almost from South America to the North Atlantic there. Very disorganized stuff, nothing really on the horizon. Eastern Pacific looking like this, a few areas of thunderstorm activity, slightly better than yesterday, but still dry air absolutely dominating this region, and there's not much going on at all. The coast of Mexico pretty much completely dry there, very little moisture reaching the coast. And checking the visible imagery right now, it's just about on the very edge of GOES 17, that is Yamaneko, and you'll see the convection on the right hand side just being pushed away from the center of the storm, which isn't actually storm force anymore. It was down to a depression, and now we've called it a remnant low, down to around 35 mph winds, derived from ASCAT. Satellite estimates are even lower, down at 30 mph, and there it is. And down towards the Eastern Pacific, once again not much going on over there, just moving around onto the other view here. Infrared onto GOES 16. It's a nice little bit of a little system there in the southwestern Caribbean, and maybe an odd tiny bit of rotation, but really nothing much. And that other system over there in the Atlantic as well, they're just empty shells. There's really nothing coming out of those. And this is what's left of Nicole, pushing a lot of moisture and convection, still a fair amount. Obviously an extratropical cyclone headed towards Western Europe, and eventually will sweep up and do a little dance with another extratropical cyclone as it pushes up towards Iceland. Well then, in the Western Pacific, this is what it looks like here right now. You can see Yamaneko again on the right hand side, another system brewing on the northwestern side of it, and they'll sort of converge together and become one big extratropical cyclone headed towards the Aleutian Islands. Down in the tropics of the Western Pacific, there's one or two little waves there moving along, but nothing really is expected out of that. GFS may be putting on one or two tiny signals over the Philippines, but we haven't marked it. And this is the Indian Ocean right now, proper monsoonal patterns going on south of the equator and to a lesser extent north. Those potential two cyclones with the low chances will form out of that on either side. And down in the southern hemisphere over Australia, a few thunderstorms blowing up over Darwin and the top end, and down towards the southeast as well, pushing towards the east coast. Thunderstorms look like they're blowing themselves out for the most part as they reach the coast. To the east, another system blowing through Fiji, probably not too bad there, but a frontal system nonetheless. Sea surface temperatures are still warm off the Pacific coast of Mexico. If a storm fancies its chances, it's not going to be sea surface temperatures that prevents it. In the Atlantic, loop current still keeping the Gulf of Mexico alive, and the Gulf Stream still shoveling up 26 and 28 degrees Celsius sea surface temperatures as far north as 30 to 35 degrees north easily. So the Atlantic is still very warm, it's just the conditions. Late season becomes very hostile with wind shear and to a lesser extent dry air. Indian Ocean looking decent, 28 or 29 degrees Celsius. Southern Hemisphere a little bit less generally, where that system might be forming. It's still good enough though. And in the Western Pacific, very warm waters, 28 to 29 degrees, pushing on 30 degrees south of 10 degrees north. So Western Pacific still looking very good for low latitude systems, and we know that it's not a stranger to late season cyclones even into December, so keep watching over there. It is above average in the Westpac. Towards the Eastern Pacific, La Nina still well in effect there, and it's slightly below average. The Atlantic very warm in the subtropics, and in the tropical zone a little bit less, but the Caribbean quite a bit above average as well, 1 to 2 degrees Celsius, but pushing 3 or 4 degrees in parts of the subtropics. Fascinating. Oceanic heat content is still very high up there in the Caribbean Sea, especially to the south of and east of Jamaica. That's the hot spot right now. In the Eastern Pacific, just a tiny few little spots there. And in the Western Pacific, still a fair amount of warm conditions, OHC, lots of energy still in there just to the west of the Mariana Islands. Let's check the models then, and this is the GFS output for the next 5 days. So first of all, we're looking down to the South Indian Ocean for this potential system forming to the southwest of Sumatra and to the southwest of Java, eventually moving towards the Cocos Islands. A tropical storm there depicted by the GFS, although I'd only say that there's only about 1.5 models supporting this now. It's dropped on some other models, the Icon most notably, so there are some big question marks as to whether this thing will actually form, but it is quite close in, so there's definitely that chance. North Indian Ocean, the Bay of Bengal region, take a look at this. Let's look out for some rotation there into the 16th, into the 17th, a broad system there. The green area is showing tropical storm force winds, and it does get itself together towards the end of that 5-day loop into the 18th and 19th, becoming a large tropical storm over the Bay of Bengal. Problem is, it's not really supported by any of the other models right now. They have got a broad little circulation, but the winds are very weak. It's so broad on the model runs. And this is rainfall estimates for the wider region all across the Indonesian area, into the Gulf of Thailand, in the South China Sea, Bay of Bengal, South Indian Ocean. Looking out for those rain areas. Philippines going to be getting a lashing towards the end of the week, looking like they're going to get some areas reaching up to about 15 inches of rain, which is quite a lot. How much is that again? I forget. Down towards the Indonesian area, some areas there getting 27 inches, remarkable. And towards the Indonesian region, getting around 10 inches, and around the coast of India, around 5 inches there as well. So 4 inches is 100 millimeters if you do the math, so nearly 400 millimeters possible in parts of the Philippines, and getting up towards 250 millimeters in Indonesia from the monsoonal pattern. Into the longer range, day 5 through 10, look at that system on the left hand side. That's the cyclone pushing into India, a fairly weak system, but the South China Sea develops a system as well, and the precursor to that is what caused all that rain in the Philippines. Then it becomes a tropical cyclone as it hovers towards the south there, and looks like it starts to intensify towards that the end of the 10-day period. So it does start there and it moves south a little bit. Fascinating to see whether that might happen or not. You can get erratic tracks like this late in the season. That's all the serious stuff done at this point. You can scan the barcode and take a look at the Force 13 merch store. We have all of our usual products, as well as full season and individual animations at your request. Also, are still waiting for Hone t-shirt, because Hone is still very far away, it seems. into the Scilly Range, and this is quite far away, and we are actually looking at the Central Pacific. So what could possibly happen here towards the end of November? Well, an extratropical low starts to come in here. They call them Kona lows in the Hawaiian region, and could possibly develop into a system there. Interesting little track, and another system out there in the Central Pacific towards the west, right at the end of that loop, that might end up becoming a tropical cyclone. But I would cast a lot of doubt over the whole thing, because the Central Pacific, one, is probably one of the most uncertain basins, certainly in the northern hemisphere, and two, it is right at the end of that 16-day period. What happens with that storm in the Westpac? Becomes a typhoon there and makes a surprise landfall in Vietnam right towards the end of November. Surprising in that it forms in the first place. I would be surprised if we saw that, but we'll see. But that's what the GFS is throwing up for us in the very late range. Just a reminder there, that's landfall on the 25th. That's still 11 days out, more than that potentially. So it is a long way, so I wouldn't be too concerned about that one at all. Also in the long range, we were having a first look at Australia for a potential tropical cyclone. You can see it first forming near Indonesia, and then it starts to wrap up a little bit and a little bit more and starts to become a tropical cyclone just before it strikes the northern part of Western Australia and moves inland down towards the southeast. That would be interesting if that happened. A very broad system, not particularly strong. It's a tropical storm there, probably moderate tropical storm there, category 1, borderline category 2 on the Australian scale, as it makes landfall and moves inland. Sparsely populated area, we'll see what happens. Hurricane week coming up not long from now, 14 days to go. From Force 13, 6 days of fun-filled events and documentary series, and our 7th day is our Force for Good charity event. More details on that in the coming week. Meanwhile, back on this day in 1994, we had Tropical Storm Gordon, which would later on become a hurricane off the east coast of the United States. Gordon was just moving along Cuba, having caused serious death in Haiti and in that general region. Surprisingly, and it's well publicized, Gordon was never retired for that. And Vania was active in the South Pacific Ocean right now. It was about to reach its peak later on today, I think, or the next day, as a strong tropical storm. Well, back to this year, and the next name on the Atlantic naming list, should we get there, is Owen. In the Eastern Pacific, there's a vanishing sign of Seymour. Doesn't look like we're going to get it. Central Pacific, next name, of course, is Hone. In the Western Pacific, the next name now is Pakar. In the North Indian Ocean, we're still waiting out for Mandus. And the next name after that is Mocha. 88 storms have formed so far this year around the world. That means we're only 4 off the annual average. Australian region, Darian's next up, Southwest Indian Ocean, Chiniso, and in the South Pacific, it's Harley. That's all from tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. We'll be back again tomorrow night.